Hello, I'm Cheryl Leake Henry, the District Attorney for Chambers County, and you're listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast for all 254 counties. Thank you for listening.
I'm Julie Chang, Communications Specialist with the Texas Association of Counties and Managing Editor of County Magazine. As we approach the close of Asian American and Pacific Islander Month in May, Texas County Voice had the pleasure of sitting down with one of the few Asian American county judges in the country, Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai. From growing up in the farmlands of Hidalgo County to taking on the top job in a predominantly Hispanic urban county, Sakai, as he puts it, has always followed the path least taken. Sakai is a member of the fastest-growing racial group in Texas, even as Asian Americans occupy a disproportionately low number of county leadership roles. He, along with K.P. George in Fort Bend County and Leo Hung in Reeves County, are the only Asian American county judges in Texas. In this episode of Texas County Voice, Sakai shares insight into how his family history, including his father's 4-year stay in a World War II internment camp, has molded his dedication to public service and how public policy can shape the lives of the state's dynamic and fast-growing Asian American community. You can read more about Sakai on County Magazine's website at www.county.org/magazine. Thank you for chatting with me today, Judge Sakai. To begin, why don't you talk about your background, how you grew up, and how you got to where you are today?
I was born and raised in McAllen, Texas, which is Hidalgo County. Some of my family history, both grandparents, my maternal and paternal side, both came from Japan. My maternal grandfather was one of the first farmers in the Rio Grande Valley back in the early 1920s, 1930s. And he was noted for bringing lettuce to the Rio Grande Valley. My mom's family, the Kawahata family, is noted in the current Institute of Texas Cultures. My father and my uncles were farmers, so I'm an old farm boy, so to speak. My father's family came in and settled in the Imperial Valley of Southern California along the border of Mexico, and they were tenant farmers there. They fell into the unfortunate circumstance of the internment of Japanese Americans at the outbreak of World War II. According to Executive Order 9066 that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed, ordering all the Japanese Americans along the West Coast to report to internment camps, and that's where my dad grew up as a teenager. He subsequently enlisted into the military in order to get out of the internment camp. He was an interpreter for the U.S. Army Occupational Force in Japan after the war ended. After his term, he got out, and him and his friend came to South Texas to be farmers. And that's where my father and mother met. My mother was actually born down in the Rio Grande Valley. I am what's called Sansei, which is third generation, but second generation born in America.
How did your mother's side of the family even discover settling in RGV?
In the early 1900s, a lot of Japanese farmer businessmen were recruited to the Houston area to develop rice farming. Back then, the Rio Grande Valley was just all raw land, all agricultural land, and the people that owned the land sold tract farms. And so that's where my maternal grandfather set up and became a successful farmer. He and my mom would travel up to San Antonio and all the way to Denver to sell their crops.
The internment camp, can you talk about the life there?
The place was called Poston, Arizona. It's in part of the Mojave Desert. What my dad explained was that Poston, Arizona internment camp was a former military post installation where my father's family, the Sakais, grew up in. So this would have been my grandfather, my grandmother, and My father with his one brother and two sisters. They literally lived in horse stalls. As a kid, my dad said, we made the best of it. It wasn't till he became an adult and then obviously a parent that he came to realize that no, it was a gross violation of a person's individual constitutional rights, that it was discrimination, it was racism, and it was something that I believe he was wanting to make sure that it didn't happen again. There are a lot of stories my dad shared from those experiences that ingrained into me the sense of duty to the Constitution and the rule of law. I give him credit to where I'm at now.
Transitioning from your childhood and your family history, how did you get involved in public service and eventually as county judge?
I tell people I'm a farm boy. I got up at sunup when my dad kicked me out of bed, and I worked to sundown when my dad finally said, okay, we can go eat and go to bed and then get up and do it again.
And what was that like, balancing being a kid and going to school and then helping out on the farm? What was the schedule like?
I hated farm work. When I got to high school, I think maybe I was a senior, I finally got the guts to confront my father and ask that he pay me so that I could have some money so that I could go out on dates or buy things. I ended up working for a friend of his, and it was, I think, a shoe store. It was a women's shoe store. So I went from a farm boy to a women's shoe store, and again, those are just life experiences that I have learned to appreciate.
Talk about the different positions you've held public office-wise.
I went to UT Law School. I would make note that when I went to UT Law School, I was the only Asian American in the whole class. Then I came to San Antonio for my first job, being an assistant DA. I was in the appellate section. Moved over into the juvenile section of the DA's office to prosecute, and within less than a year, I was the youngest section chief at that time at the age of 27. So that kind of started my path of working with children and families. And then left to go to private practice, and later toward the end, I was focusing totally on civil law and did a lot of representation of municipalities, small municipalities here in Bexar County, and did a lot of personal injury, workers' compensation cases at that time. In 1995, I was recruited by two district court judges who I considered my mentors at that time to take the position of the newly created children's court. My original courtroom was a 1,200 square foot, and we dubbed it the closet. And we just packed people in there hearing child abuse cases, child protective services cases. And so in those cases, you have parents, you got relatives, you got occasionally the children, you have lawyers, you got caseworkers, you have a multitude of people, and they were all crammed into the courtroom called the closet. And so I ran that till 2003, 2004, when County Judge Wolf and his wife Tracy decided that was unacceptable, that we had that type of space for these cases, that these cases deserve much more respect and dignity. And so Tracy Wolf raised $4 million. The county put in $1 million. We got AT&T, I believe, at that time, and other major corporations all contributed to create a 12,000 square foot layout on the third floor of the historic Bexar County Courthouse. From there, my mentor at that time was the judge of the 25th District Court, Judge John Specia, who decided to retire. And in 2006, I won a primary and a general election and was sworn in on January 1 of 2007. And so I was a district court judge for 4 terms. I had made a decision to retire from the 225th District Court. And when Judge Wolf decided that he wasn't going to run, he and I being very good friends, I decided in having a conversation with him that this was another opportunity. I decided that I didn't want to retire because as I put it, my wife said I couldn't come home and watch TV all the time. Unfortunately, in all my work for children and families, I haven't developed a lot of hobbies. So I decided running for county judge, and being the county judge would be something I would, only because I really felt that I could take my passion and commitment for children and families to another level. Obviously, as county judge, I'm the CEO, so to speak, of the county, and I help, along with 4 county commissioners, make the decisions of what the priorities for county government are. Obviously, many are already statutorily delegated, mandated, but at the same time, I believe I bring a special perspective of what we can do for children and families. And obviously, I also want to give recognition to my wife, who I've been married for 44 years, Rachel Diaz Sakai, and she's been an educator for 32 years in the Harlandale Independent School District, and then she spent 3 years at the community college, and then 10 years at a private Catholic parochial school. And so she has been totally committed to education and also been involved in all the nonprofits. So not only am I appreciative of her being my lovely wife for all those years and putting up with me, but the fact that she's also brought a special perspective of what we have to do for children. I'm in my second year and trying my best to make county government more responsive, to be more accountable, to be more open and transparent. I would say the toughest challenge I have as the new county judge is fighting the status quo.
Is there an example of something that when you came into office you did question the status quo of?
Yes. One of the first big policy decisions I had to make as county judge was the appointment of a judge to our probate court number 3, which was newly created by statute. Typically, those appointments were made just by internal discussions of the commissioner's court, and perhaps they went through an interview process, but the court would just make a decision based on their process. I decided that as a longtime jurist and attorney, that there should be public-private discussion, meaning not only should involve the commissioners and the court, but it also include the public. So I put all the appointed heads of the local bar associations together. And then I had a chair, an attorney who was well respected, many years of experience. And it was just to screen the applicants and submit to the Commissioner's Court their final recommendations. And I'm proud to say that I truly believe that we selected, and the best applicant candidate for probate court was indeed appointed and sworn in. Her name is Barbie Scharf Zeldas, and she is currently our newest judge on the bench here in Bexar County. And that would be an example of what I consider open and transparent government. That's what I would also consider as trying to make sure that the private bar was involved and that people had a sense of confidence that we picked the best person.
You highlighted the importance of following Constitution, the rule of law, and I'm assuming your stepping into public office is reinforcing that and ensuring that rights that were deprived of your family are not repeated again.
Correct. And to make sure that every decision that I made, especially as a district court bench, I made tough decisions that had some public uproar as a result of my decisions. I made thousands of decisions, perhaps hundreds of thousands of decisions involving children. And some of the toughest cases a judge can hear are termination of parental rights, which some lawyers say that's the death penalty cases in civil law. I mean, that's the worst that you can suffer, is to have your children removed and taken away and permanently never given back to you. That's the reason why following the law is so important. I believe more than ever that we need elected officials who understand the rule of law. That's my internal gyroscope of what I need to do as a public leader. I just have to make sure that it is in accordance with what the law is.
Right.
And occasionally we have laws that I don't like. Occasionally there are laws that I don't agree with, but we need to follow laws.
Yeah.
And we have to respect that it's the legislature that makes the rules. And so we basically, county government takes its marching orders from the state.
But sometimes without any financial backing.
But I mean, this kind of advances the discussion here, but one of my core beliefs is that what we need to do as county officials is figure out how to fix things at the local level. We certainly would appreciate state and federal assistance, but we can't depend on them. And I believe as people bring issues or problems to the court's attention, that it is up at the local level to figure out how we resolve it.
The government closest to the people.
That's right. And we should look things through a public-private partnership. We need to see what the private sector can bring so that government isn't necessarily relied upon solely. One of the big things I see in children and family is we partner up with our nonprofit community, especially those that are very renowned and very strong in regards to family violence, drug and alcohol treatment, mental health. I think that what we do and what we're doing now, especially now with our ARPA monies, is we have made a significant contribution here in Bexar County to mental health, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and domestic and family violence.
I want to transition the last segment of our conversation to the AAPI community.
Okay.
As you know, the AAPI community is the fastest growing racial group in the state. What are some county policies that need to be established to support that? And even as advice to other counties that might be experiencing growth in this segment? Because obviously AAPI is not a monolithic group, right?
And you just hit the nail on the head. We're not all alike. As you and I can look at each other and say, hold it, your experiences are probably very different from mine, as I presume. The recent immigrant Asian Americans' experience are very different from the American Asian Americans. So a county official needs to first respect the diversity of the Asian Americans. I can tell you, the Japanese Americans are probably the least numbered Asian in the state of Texas, but I believe it's the Filipino community, it's the Vietnamese community, and understand their needs are all separate and distinct. And it takes a county judge who's willing to go learn, to meet and learn the Asian community and to address the needs of each specific community that they may be in. We have a significant Indian and Pakistani community now. I just went to their dinner the other day. They're very involved with the convenience store, gas stations, small business. They're all small business people. So I don't choose to look at what's an Asian American policy. I choose to look at what are the needs of these people that are unique to my community. And so I'm very sensitive about whatever fees or taxes we impose on gasoline, cigarettes, beer, that are the lifeline of these small businesses that are predominantly owned by minorities. They have made it very clear that if I keep adding compliance fees and monitoring fees, I can put them out of business. And then in regards to Asian Americans in a whole, we're in, a turbulent, toxic time where there are anti-Asian incidences. And I have made a pledge that I will condemn it. I will not tolerate it. I will make sure that our law enforcement is sensitive to any anti-Asian propaganda or prejudice.
You mentioned how public-private partnerships are essential.
Yes.
Also, probably to also economic development. So nearby Williamson County, closer to my area, they've been courting a lot of Asian corporations, Samsung among them. Any interest to attract any of those businesses?
Of course, we have Toyota. We have Toyota Manufacturing. They make Tundra and Sequoia trucks, and they keep expanding. Toyota came on board 20 years ago after intense recruitment with the Japanese officials. And in fact, I am taking a trip to Japan in May to introduce myself. And I'm quite proud that I will be able to introduce myself to the Japanese officials, that they're now meeting a Japanese-American county judge, and that we have much in common, not just in the economic development, but from a cultural, ethnic perspective. And so I'm excited. I know with our economic development team that we are constantly recruiting businesses and corporations from Japan. In fact, I just came back from the joint session of Congress 2 weeks ago, where the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Kishida, emphasized the relationship with Japan and the United States and how they needed each other more than ever, and that he was committed to engage with the United States with economic development in developing Japanese corporations here in the United States. And so I am going to Japan to make sure they know who I am and know who Bexar County is and what we have to offer. And as you may well know, the hot spot is the Austin to San Antonio corridor. That's on a local level. There's a lot of conversations between me and Judge Andy Brownlee Travis. We are fast developing a great relationship and friendship so that we're sharing as opposed to competing.
I hope that there's also some pleasure in your trip to Japan and not just work.
There'll be some play in there, but more just let's go over there, let's see who I need to see, and then get back and figure out what things need to get fixed over here.
As an Asian American who has the privilege of chatting with you today, it's truly inspirational to be able to see you occupy this role in county government. What advice do you have for Asian Americans who are looking to become involved in county government?
What I think is important for Asian Americans is recognize, although we may be small in total number, the aggregate number, I truly believe that the Asian American has tremendous strength and power. One, in the economic power, so they have the ability to get involved in political campaigns and give contributions. Two, you're seeing more and more Asian Americans rise up to the occasions of running for office. And finally, what I see is that the non-Asian community, especially the non-Asian elected officials, are recognizing that they need to address the needs of the AAPI community in order to seek their vote. Running for office has not been easy. I have been told that I would never win in this community because I was not a Hispanic. I was told, you're a good guy, great lawyer, you work hard, you do all the right things, but you just don't have the right name. You don't have the right face, and you'll never be elected. But I overcame it. And I think that's the beauty and the greatness of America. With your individual spirit and your ingenuity and your commitment to that value set that I said earlier, I think the sky's the limit. We perhaps have maybe had to work harder, but that's the way it is with all minority groups, whatever it may be, have to work harder and have to prove themselves. I have chosen to look at upon that's been a positive experience. And I think that'd be my message to the AAPI community is to, one, challenge the status quo, be involved in the political world, and if you can, run for office.
You've been listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast from the Texas Association of Counties about the people, issues, and all things important to Texans and Texas counties. To learn more about Texas counties, and the Texas Association of Counties, visit county.org.